G'day, Dan here, checking in. Just wanted to shed some light for those that aren't aware on, I suppose, what's been in my mind for several years now through these epiphanies and past experiences in my life. Continued evolution and improvement upon those thoughts and realizations and the solutions, long story short, that I'd like to help bring to the world and to individuals, to people, and then the collective. Because, what we are absorbing, and then our beliefs, and then what we are saying from those thoughts is creating, it's affecting around us in terms of connection through frequency to the world and to others that we come across. And unfortunately, there's a bit of satire going on through different content that's absorbed through social media and through mass media, news, all that stuff that's creating AI, generated content as well. We now need to be aware of and discern through. Because if that instills and brings a belief into your system and disrupts your center point, then you can then start having thoughts and words that come out and speak within a collective, within an environment with other people, and so on and so on. It has a perpetual flow-on effect. So, and my belief in terms of beginning was the word, and you look at, even if you're not religious, just staying in a truth to that center point is, and not lying and doing those, just living in some basic principles is what keeps us, I suppose, grounded within a harmonious frequency, I suppose. Hopefully the words are coming out right. But there's a few different reasons that inspired and what I was doing this video. I actually wanted to talk about the broader picture of what I saw as a sort of a roadmap, and it starts with us being, a really sovereign steward in ourselves and having our own castle and house in order. And then once that is in place, then being able to bring that into the collective and help others, because that's really outside of, we're not taking money and anything at all, except for our spirit and soul when we leave this place. So there's more to money, and there's some, in this abundant world and opportunities with technology and just the change of what's going on, abilities and opportunities to pay it forward. But then there's a little bit of a catch-22 in regards to playing Santa Claus and ego coming in. And I've adjusted some thinking and got some ideas around that, which I'll touch on in another video. But long story short, just so everyone's very clear, in terms of unified purpose, this abundant world I envisaged, with Imagine Land being the path from our mind and as a collective, for us to really, get into that space through the Future You program. And I'm adjusting that now as well, because I've realised, in terms of time, looking, and there's a need for going through the initial process of reflecting on the past and then manifesting into the future. But in myself, with my mind and stuff, remaining in the present, because that's really what it is. And it's amazing what can happen with frequency in our makeup in 2-3 days, even with the reset in our nervous systems and our body. So I'm a continual working process on really honing in on that presence, but reflecting into what's the end in mind and the future, to have that certainty in amongst all sort of the chaos and uncertainty, is really what I was really passionate about and saw within the Future You program. And there's so much, that we need to take on and discern through, as I sort of touched on before. But long story short, in terms of the knowledge business, and I've spoken about this, I won't go into, but the sort of roadmap to, be able to achieve this is to make accessible all these marketing sort of tools and not have to pay these people thousands of dollars, like work out, be a tech sort of person and to build a community basically, and to get your voice and story heard and what you stand for and what's your purpose, and whether you're doing a big project, whatever, you've got e-commerce, whatever it might have been, to make sure those things were accessible without you having to have the headaches that I've endured and others have definitely endured as entrepreneurs and whatnot. There's many things as a hurdle to overcome when you're doing that, and that's one of them. But doing that as for individuals and then collectively with sort of working groups, I've done group interviews and whatnot, with work like people that could contribute to this end in mind roadmap along every step of the way. So that's an academy agency at the start, marketing, then the academy coming into exchanging of knowledge, the wisdom holders in certain niches, skill sets, topics, to be able to pass that down to the individuals coming through to do the collective wisdom to keep up and remain with this content and with the information flow, having it human to human, not just all AI sort of generated. So yeah, that's where it's, very important to validate, someone's done that work, it's a human, etc., as we, evolve into this time. And then going into a sort of marketplace or an exchange for projects and jobs. And that would connect to ultimately the scenario with what I've spoken about with collaboration sort of pieces and people being attributed. I know connectors and introducers, referrers have really in the past not been attributed for connections and things that have come into reality by, might have been through goodwill as well, but making these introductions in business, and people have been left behind and maybe not getting their small percentage of value that's been brought and from those solutions to people in the world. And that's, whether it was deliberate or not by the people that have done it, it's happened. It happens regularly. So I think, the connector roles, that is people that can be rewarded, and you can get involved with projects just by doing that and having, a framework of the program at the front door, which I will say that the program and the outline of that is taking on sort of a framework that fits into this whole sort of roadmap, and that could be made accessible to people, where it could be proven, where you could just utilize it and start to have certainty and financial security with those marketing systems as you bring your story and your sort of what you're doing into that. So I'll go further into that in another video. But through the abundant sort of mindset and getting back onto track where I was, and sort of a surplus, I used to be like joking with Buckshot, my business partner, and not joking, I'd always be serious, but it would turn into a joke, he'd laugh, because I'd always say I'd cap my capitalism. And then there's a bit of an issue there, and and I've seen an experiment with mice in terms of having full abundance, and then they start to turn on each other and whatnot when that became a reality. So there's certain things still to, be mindful of in human nature and community, but anyway. And also playing Santa Claus in terms of handing out money and doing it, like I said, ego. And I think if we put money into a sort of surplus fund that, was governed and managed for a community, for grassroots projects, and to support through scholarships and grants, that, again, had governance and people on various levels to be able to manage that with some of these tech systems, which is where, the blockchain and sort of AI, could play that role. To make sure it's systemized, I suppose, but still with human decision making. But the funds going in, it was a collective thing, and it wasn't like where it goes after that, but also at the same time through these smart contracts and through these systems that it's going direct to the source. Because in a lot of charitable based things, there's been a lot of administration, a lot of wasted money, and sometimes not going to the problem, the solution that money was meant to be going towards. So, you know, the same as what I mentioned in the music video with direct distribution to contributors of a track or whatnot, that same scenario can apply where for your business, and I've done interviews and got a call coming up with B1G1 where it was like for business for good and for purpose. And, you know, again, it's this scenario with people online not doing it just for an ego sort of point of view. It's there just for genuine, you know, purpose and impact, and then knowing that your operations and, you know, that surplus, or and even doesn't need to be surplus, you can factor it into your business model from the start, really. But anyway, yeah, having after the marketplace or the projects and jobs, and the marketplace can involve, you know, exchange of knowledge and the knowledge business and whatnot, but is having some capital management, abundance capital management solutions. That could be, you know, a new way of being able to support grassroots projects and eliminate some of these issues, maybe to offset as well some of these costs and whatnot of technology and access. So, you know, these big organisations that have had the opportunity to strengthen themselves and just get bigger, where we can maybe spread that opportunity sideways was the goal. And at the same time to be able to have resources and solutions and abilities for these working groups that come from the academy, which I suppose there's two layers to that, just to be clear. There's sort of masterminds, and which is the people with skills, the wisdom holders getting together to collectively keep up with all the change and evolution in their model and the industry or topic niche they're in. And then there's, you know, when you look at sort of community, it goes into a core, and those core would then become sort of a working group in a particular category and sector of a broader ecosystem, or just categorization for just the world really is the ecosystem. So a lot of what I've done, even looking, I did a bit of a research report on the SDGs, and there's different things that I suppose have occurred in the UN in different groups. As it happens with humans and people and management, you know, you might start with something and then it evolves into something that it wasn't meant to be, or it gets off track, or just even if that's a percentage of things. But long story short, I looked at it as, again, categorizations of solutions for the world. And that's where, yeah, again, you know, with distribution of resources and profits, we can have people that are then coming up and have their business aligned with these solutions that are needed in the world. And again, having democratized, which means making sure they have access and easier pathways to bring these solutions to life. And even if you're an existing business and startups, like same thing, I've spent a lot of time and got accredited as an exponential organization consultant with OpenExo by doing a contra deal, helping them with marketing. And a couple of the key things, like when you're, you know, starting up, it's like staff on demand, community and crowd, autonomy, leveraged assets, and engagement. That's the sort of first ones for a startup. But, you know, in terms of existing business or whatnot, there's adjustments in business models these days anyway, where still there's a community that's needed. And there's a thing called an Ask campaign with these marketing campaigns, where when you're building a course or building a sort of framework or a program step by step to get to that end result, there's a really simple process and the most important thing is, what's that solution? Who's it for? You know, they're really narrowing down initially, because you can broaden that afterwards. But that's very important initially to do that. But long story short, you can ask, you know, what is the number one concern? What are the number one questions? Or what are the number one objections, etc., that you have in regards to getting to that end result? And it's typically going to have something to do with the vehicle being used to get to that end result, or internal mental barriers that they may have, or external influences, that is things going on in the world and whatnot that can potentially affect getting to that end result outcome. But when it comes to an existing business, adjusting business model, there's, you know, the old business model canvas. It's the old business models aren't applicable to today. We've got a different world. So there's, you know, attributes and things to implement, but the ability to adjust a business model or start up a project comes from community and those people that are aligned with what that purpose, and obviously there's benefits that they may want, but there's also people that will go and do business or consume, or I suppose if you've got the two solutions, but you've got one that's doing more purposeful sort of work and one's that's doing it proven for profit, and maybe have proven to not just maybe have the most pure intent and just be growth orientated, whatever it might be, there's ways to discern through that. So anyway, like I say, the abundance sort of capital, and then from an impact point of view after that, I sort of honed in and I spent a bit of time in the investment world that linked to the capital sort of stuff and capital raising and venture capital, how they, not the best thing for entrepreneurs. I had that experience. Businesses get taken and whatnot. But then also the other thing to expand on that, looking at, here in Australia and a few other places around the world, is housing. Where I'm sitting, living out of this car currently. So, and that's not through, I could have made some better sort of choices and had that more secure, but that was my path. Anyway, won't dwell on that and speak about it too much on this right now, but that's the reality of the situation. And it wasn't my motivation when looking at housing and then also food, looking at some of and I was just at a flat battery yesterday. I had to get a push start. I was talking to this guy how he was in New Zealand, in the front yards and on the streets there was food. And there was another book, I've got a video I'll produce on sort of guerrilla gardening, and I mentioned Jim Garland in another video not long ago around food forest, and he's doing stuff around schools where we've got all these pesticides and toxic sort of stuff going on our lawns, keeping great lawns but no food. I don't know how many people's got lemon trees these days. But, in terms of housing prices and how much land we actually have here in Australia, it's just it bamboozles me that there hasn't been solutions put in place, and there's still, places, I know in Los Angeles there's been tent cities. I mean, why is that when we've had so much money going into all sorts of different things around the world and all this, helping out people and whatnot, we still haven't got an opportunity in places to put people in a house and pathways for them to bring their skills. They're still good people. They might have made some mistakes or whatnot. And who knows? Everyone's had their different pathway. But long story short, from some of that surplus and also money is to then, going to certain things. And for me, it was, the family unit. And there was this, visible internet I used to work with. Now sort of I'm pursuing that with a family bloom version to keep family units strong, and how all this infrastructure can help with that certainty and extracurricular, in terms of schooling and jobs prospects. That ties into a video podcast or release on education, business and jobs and satisfaction around that, and how it applies to today. So that's again coming back to certainty stuff I mentioned earlier, and food and shelter and housing. So, ultimately that was where my passion, sort of lied in terms of directing my surplus sort of funds, and then also into pockets around the world where it was sort of train the trainer, and to power up other purpose-driven leaders in the collective in their region that know what their needs are, that can, with certain tools also as well, like within the infrastructure, to be able to, manage it without being overwhelmed and all that sort of stuff, long story short. So, I suppose I'll sort of cut it off there. It's getting close to 20 minutes and extend on. If there's any questions, comments, feedback, much appreciated. And I'll, continue to refine my message. And really this is to give some clarity, to invite those that are leaders that are resonating with the message to see, let's have a conversation and let's start some online events and physical events. If you're, around the area, you're here in Australia, then ultimately, this isn't again about me setting something up and doing it all for me, making wealth and all that. It's, a long time ago, again, I capped capitalism. I knew, I've always had a feeling that wealth is there, and for me, I've taken risks for that and a bit behind on certain things that's okay, because I've got a knowing and understanding that things will work out because of that pure intent. And because it's been a huge manifestation that to help people. It hasn't been about me. And there's been some adjustments I've needed to make in terms of going back to that present moment and the future, and not dwelling on some of the stuff from the past that's occurred. But that's just been my journey. So anyway, I said I was going to pull this up. I think that covers on a lot of it. And yeah, look forward to continuing to provide any value. If there's any questions, or again, any education or anything that you, again, going back to that Ask campaign and any other videos, if there's anything at all that I'm riffing on, that I'm speaking on, again, if I don't have the answers, I'm very good at finding someone that does. And I'll do an interview, I'll compile that research and speak to it as best as I can if I don't get that person. And, you know, just enjoy seeing this journey, seeing me from this car manifest something from, you know, creation, from a pure place. It doesn't matter where you're at, who you are, there's something that you have to bring to this world. And it comes back to that center point balance for you to be worthy and understand that. And yeah, bring these things to reality now. There's a lot of conversations that need to be had that I think we aren't having, and it comes back to that satire and creation of what are we taking on, what are we letting happen, where is humanity going. So, you know, let's have some of these conversations and you know, work together. All right, have a nice day or night, evening, good sleep, wherever you are. Thank you. Bye-bye.